All right, welcome back, everyone. I have a special guest on today. I got Simon, the Uneducated Economist, and he has over 130,000 subscribers on YouTube. And most people probably know him for the dice. He's always sitting in his vehicle doing these lives. But welcome, Simon.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
No, thanks for doing this. I'm super glad we were able to connect. We did connect at Michael Zuber's One Rental at a Time event in Vegas, and you were one of the guest speakers. And so I always joke about it, but a lot of times, you're always talking about macroeconomics and whatnot, but a lot of times it's very detailed and in depth, and sometimes it's going over my head a lot of times, or a lot of people's head. But once we kind of get into it and we kind of maybe go back on our notes, it gets easier to understand. But why don't you kind of might give my audience a little bit about your background? Like, do you have an economics degree, and where this name's uneducated economist come from?
Yeah, surprisingly, no, I have no degree, no formal education. I do not work in finance, don't have family in finance. I don't do really investments. I don't own businesses. I'm literally the guy who works down there at the lumber yard. That's me. But I have this incredible obsession for studying economics, and it's been a pretty much a lifelong mission to wrap my head around monetary policy and just macroeconomics in general. And so I've had pretty much an obsession over economics, trying to figure out what was going on during the great financial crisis as I was losing my job and going into foreclosure on my house, eventually going into depression and just kind of having like kind of a bad time of my life. I went to the computer to try and figure out what the hell was going on. And so I just started typing away, what is, and just never gave up.
So, are you saying this kind of only was a passion maybe around the great financial crisis era, or like from when you were a little kid?
Well, ever since I was a little kid, I always liked coin collecting. So I would always pull like the wheat pennies out, or if I saw, maybe something like a silver quarter or something that would really excite me, $2 bills, things like that was always something that I had collected and just kind of had an interest in. And then one day I was thinking to myself, you're not doing well. Maybe you should take on a hobby. And I said, well, why don't you just make a hobby out of money and just understanding money and collecting money? And so I just kind of started getting more into coin collecting and then learning about silver and just kind of moved on from there. And that's probably one of the reasons why I was so passionate about studying macroeconomics is because I already kind of had this interest in coin collecting and money in general.
So, why not go to school for that? Or do you feel like you're learning a lot more on your own?
Didn't know I should. Really, I was just kind of studying just for fun. And I would talk a lot to my friends. It's just like, hey, do you know what a mortgage-backed security is? Do you know what credit default swaps are? And I remember one day I was at work and, I work the desk. I do a lot of special order sales. So I'm at my desk at work and typing away, and I'm talking about, I don't know, taper tantrum or something. And this is like mid or late 2017. And I remember this girl Brittany. She comes up to me, and she's this really tall blonde girl, and kind of like a farm girl, rode and like ride horses and stuff. And she puts her fist on my desk and looks me right in the eye and says, "Listen, dude, you're gonna have to start a blog or a YouTube channel or something because nobody understands what you're talking about, and you are driving us crazy." And I went, "Oh, right, okay, sorry, Brittany, you're right." So I grabbed my phone. I went down to my car, which was this old 1996 Aurora, right? It was like this big Cadillac looking type of car, just a hammered old beast, and fired up my video. It was or for my phone, it was a used iPhone 6 that I bought for $100. And I recorded an introductory video to The Uneducated Economist. I went back into work, used the work's Wi-Fi to upload the video, and The Uneducated Economist was born. That was my first YouTube video. Still up today. You could go to my channel, and that's the very first video of all the videos I've ever done. Yeah, right. And that's it. And that started The
Yeah.
Uneducated Economist. And I had no idea, absolutely no idea what I was going to do with this channel because I had other YouTube channels before, and they were fun. Like I would make videos, I would edit videos. I had a lot of fun editing videos, so I would like set up like I would do chickens. I had like a hobby, like raising chickens and stuff. So I set up like 5 or 6 cameras around my yard and make these like little chicken videos and stuff. And they were a lot of fun to do, but they weren't very popular at all. Yeah. And so I started putting out these like economic videos, just kind of talking about cryptocurrencies and silver and just whatever my thoughts on economics. And I was already in building supplies, right? So I work a retail yard. And I would talk about building supplies and kind of incorporate that into the housing market. And nobody watched, like literally nobody watched these videos, right? And it was like, and it feels kind of foolish when you're putting out videos that nobody's watching. It kind of feels like, man, why am I doing this? This doesn't make any sense, right? Like if nobody's watching, I'm going to go out there and do something for nothing or kind of idea or something. But that's not the way I looked at it. Like what I looked at it as is my own personal journal. And the videos I was putting out was just more for my own recordings, like, for me to kind of understand what it was that I was seeing at the time. And I would put the links down in the description so I could go back and find those articles that I was referring to at the time. And so that's the way I looked at it. I was just like, I don't care if anybody's watching or not. I'm just going to put these things out from my own personal journal. And that's kind of the way I looked at it. Well, when you're consistent on YouTube and you are consistent not only to the timing that you put it out, but also consistent to the topics that you're covering, then you end up like YouTube will take and find the audience for you. Like they are out there in search. Like the algorithm wants to spread your videos around, but if you're not consistent for the algorithm, then the algorithm doesn't know what to do for you, right? So if you sit around being consistent enough, well, eventually one of your videos might do pretty well. And that's what eventually happened to me is that I had done a housing video that got like, I don't know, it got like 1,000 views or something like, and it scared me. I'm like, whoa, like I am used to like 20 people at most watching my videos, and this thing has like 1,000 views going on, and it's like everybody's gonna know who I am. I got to delete my channel. And, like literally, that's the way I felt about it. But my family was pretty encouraging. They're like, "Oh no, who cares? You're already pretty popular around town. Like everybody knows who you are. So who are you hiding from?" And I'm like, you're right. So I just stuck with it, and I'm like, okay, well, I'll just keep putting out the videos. And well, I started talking a lot about lumber because that's what I was into. I sit right in the middle of timber country from the Pacific Northwest. I know people who work at the mills. I know truck drivers. I know distribution networks, wholesalers, retailers. There's no part of the like industry that I am not like aware of or have my fingers on the pulse of the industry from. So when I was calling out lumber, I was calling out lumber before anybody even cared about even noticing what lumber was. Like nobody even knew lumber was a commodity until it shot up till 1,700 per thousand. And when everybody was looking for information, they realized that I had a year's worth of talking about mill curtailments and inventory shutdowns and all kinds of stuff. So that's what made me really popular on YouTube was being able to call out that lumber market so accurately as I was. And I just happened to be in a good position for my retail job and then also having like this hobby, like this extreme hobby of studying macroeconomics. Putting those two together was just like it just put me in the perfect place, and I just skyrocketed on YouTube after that.
Well, before we go down that lumberyard and your job, I kind of want to circle back to like the beginning of your. So, how long has your YouTube channel been out?
I started it in November of 2017.
Oh, that's okay. Okay. And then like you said, you had a old iPhone. I mean, where did the name come from and the dice and the set? So how did all of that come into play?
So okay, so the name is something that I had just kind of joked around about for the longest time because I would be sitting there babbling off to my friends and they would be like, "Whoa, like, dude, you know a lot about this." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm like the uneducated economist, huh?" So it was kind of like just a joke like that I had. So it was just something that was kind of in the back of my head that just been floating around anyway. Just kind of gave myself that label, but didn't really like, I didn't consider it a brand. I just something that was there. So when I did the YouTube channel, it was already like kind of in the back of my head. So that's what I used for the name because I couldn't think of anything else at the time. Like if I had tried to think about it, it wouldn't have been that good. It wouldn't have been as good as it was. And in fact, since I didn't think anybody was going to be watching anyway, I just didn't care. So it was just like, we'll just use the uneducated economist. That's kind of funny. And that's really how I got the name. And from there. The dice was an interesting story. That came from a viewer because I was always in the car, and everybody asked me why you do these videos from the car, and it was simply because it was the quietest place I could find. Like that was it. That was the only reason why. And then a lot of people don't realize, but the car is actually a really good sound studio. Like all the seats and upholstery and everything, absorbs all the echoing. So you don't have like a lot of the issues of like that hollow sound that you get inside of a room that you didn't have to deal with as far as like, trying to create a studio space that has good audio. The car is like automatic for it. It just does it. And so this is one of the reasons why I went into the cars, just because it was quiet here and it had good sound quality. And then since I was doing it in the car all the time, somebody sent me the fuzzy dice as a joke, like, hey, here's your fuzzy dice for your rear view mirror. And I thought, oh, hey, that's cool. So the fan gave them to me. I threw them up there, and everybody started like joking around about the dice and started doing like numerology and stock picks and all kinds of stuff off of the dice. And so they ended up sticking around. I couldn't get rid of them. So anyway, that's how the dice came about. Was literally a viewer sent them to me, and it was like it became part of the channel.
I love it. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
so when do you so your channel's at 130,000 subscribers right now. Like when do you think you probably hit that 100,000 mark around?
When did I?
Yeah, like rough. How many years do you think it took for you to from the start to when you got like 100,000?
Well, I hit the 100,000 mark, not just shy of 2 years ago.
Oh,
Yeah, so about a year and a half ago, I hit the 100,000. So I've gotten like 30,000 subscribers in the last year and a half. The first 100,000 subscribers, well, I would say like the first 5,000 subscribers, first to 5,000 subscribers was like, to me, like the longest. It took forever, right, to get to 5,000 subscribers. And something really interesting started happening at about 5,000 subscribers is that I started getting like a lot of people who wanted to do collaboration videos. Right? And they're like, hey, man, I really like your information and the stuff that you're talking about. You want to come on the channel? Sure. Right. Well, one day I'm watching my YouTube channels, just watching the videos out there, and I see this guy is doing just an impressive channel, right? Like the videos that he's doing are just like high quality. He's got this whiteboard. He's breaking economics down really good. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, why does this guy only have 300 subscribers? This guy is like good. I mean, he's like really, really, really good. And so I do a video. I'm thinking, well, maybe I'll just do a quick video of my favorite YouTubers out there and just kind of give these guys a shout out. So I gave like, a couple of guys, Bull Boom, Bear Bust, and Alaska Preppers, and then this guy, George Gammon. Right. And so I throw George Gammon's name out there and tell everybody, dude, you got to check this dude out. He only has like 300 subscribers and he's really, really good. Well, next thing I know, George Gammon gets a hold of me and he says, hey, man, thank you for the shout out. I really appreciate it. I've been doing these real estate videos. They're not very popular, but the macroeconomics ones are. I have a professional crew that helped, that did a real, a real estate TV show down in Colombia. They're professional. We're going to get a hold of you and kind of upgrade your channel a little bit and do all that. And I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. Like I did, like, I'm like, whatever, George. I don't know who you are, but that's cool. I really appreciate the offer, man. I'll talk to your crew. And they were really polite and really nice and helpful. And they helped me out and kind of show me some stuff to do with the channel to kind of make it upgraded a little bit. And then next thing I know, George Gammon is this huge. He's this huge dude all over the internet. And I'm like, whoa, man, what happened to here? And he was just like, hey, man, I really appreciate, that shout out you gave me all those years ago. We did a few collaboration videos together. How would you like to come down to the Rebel Capitalist and speak on stage about the lumber industry? And like, that's like how everything really started to take off. Well, I'm sorry, I guess I jumped ahead a little bit on that, but that was when I was at 5,000 subscribers. I gave that shout out. Well, shortly after that, the pandemic started to kick in and lumber prices took off. So I shot up to 10,000 really quickly. Like I went from 5 to 10 inside of a couple of months. And then shortly after that, when the lumber industry took off, it was just like, boom, all of a sudden I'm getting thousands of subscribers a day sometimes. And it shot all the way up to like 50,000 subscribers, almost like it felt like within just a couple of weeks, but it really was probably over the course of about 6 months. And then it really was steady growth for up until about 2020, right? Right about when I hit about 100,000 subscribers. Um, like the lumber story had come to an end, like it was like people weren't as excited about lumber anymore. I mean, it was still quite elevated at the time, but it was like tapering off, like less people were interested in lumber. And so as far as the channel's growth after that, like I said, about over the last, since then, about since 2020, I've gotten about 30,000 subscribers over the course of the last couple of years. So,
Well, let's stay. Yeah, let's stay right here, though. You
yeah.
keep bringing up the lumber and whatnot, and you're saying that's the industry that you're in, and you're like the only one kind of the relationship between that, the housing market, and whatnot. Like, like you mentioned, a lot of people don't think of it as a commodity. And so, how are you using that to kind of talk about the economy, the housing market, and whatnot?
Yeah. Well, the housing market has all kinds of issues all within its own that, lumber has a nice story that it tells along with it because lumber is a huge part of the real estate industry, especially when it comes to new construction. It represents a huge portion of the construction cost, but it's not everything within it. However, lumber as just the commodity on itself and what that relays back into the macroeconomics, I thought was very, very telling. Now, something that a lot of people were pointing at during the hyperinflation scenario that we were all experiencing is they were pointing at lumber saying, look at it go up to 1700 per thousand. Money printer go burr, prices go up. Look at lumber. Lumber is the perfect indicator of money printing taking off and causing the prices to go up. And I was screaming on my channel, no, this is wrong. This is a supply chain breakdown that has taken place that's causing these lumber prices to be as elevated as they are. I lost so many subscribers over that. They told me I was crazy, that I had no idea what I was talking about, and that they were abandoning the channel because, I'm giving out false information. And I screamed then, I was like, well, what are you all going to say when lumber prices go back down to a normal price, right? So here we are at 500 per thousand. We've been here for months on end, right? I mean, lumber prices shot up to 1700 per thousand, kind of bounced around quite a bit where they dropped to 4, jumped back up to 12, and now they're here at 500 per thousand. And they've been this way for a very long time, for months and months and months now. So all the inflation absolutely left lumber, right? Like just vanished out of lumber, and nobody can explain that except I was out there on my channel saying, hey, this is going to happen. And now the reason why I was able to call this out is not because I'm some kind of expert in lumber and knew that there was going to be there. It was literally because I was calling out the bullwhip effect. It's a macroeconomics theory of oversupply versus undersupply and what ends up happening to the prices in relationship to the production that is happening out there. So if you understand the bullwhip effect, it was clearly presenting itself within lumber and it was easy to see. But if you didn't know about those macroeconomic conditions, then a lot of people are just going to blame the mills or blame it on something or blame it on the money printer because really, if you just don't know, you're going to assume. And since everything else was going up because of the money printer or supposedly because of the money printer, why not lumber be the same story? But when it came back down to a normal price, it became very difficult to explain that unless you were looking at the supply side of things, which is that's what I was doing, was looking at supply side to call out why lumber was as expensive as it was and the reason why it fell back down to the normal price.
As you're talking about, the supply demand factors of the economy. So how
Yeah.
does that, or how would you relate that to the housing market and where we're at right now, like the supply and demand with
Yeah.
prices?
Well, and that's what price is like. It doesn't matter. I mean, this is hard to say because most people end up rolling their eyes when I say this, but it doesn't really matter how much money you have in the system. What matters is how much money is being spent. All right. So if it's just sitting in a bank not doing anything, then there's no inflation or anything that's going to be coming from that. It really comes down to supply and demand. How much demand is that money causing to the supply that's out there? And again, if it's sitting in a bank, it's not doing anything. So quantitative easing like 1, 2, 3, and 4 failed to produce the inflation scenario that we were looking for. But you did find like things like house prices go up during that time because the money being lent into the system, the only new money coming in was going into housing. So now we have to look back here today. Like this is a completely different scenario than what was taking place back then, right? What we have now is we have supply and demand issues that are happening with the inventory levels of new homes, right? Or even just existing homes that are out there. And you can take all the excuses, all the interest rates, all the stuff that's out of there. It really comes down to how many people want to buy a house and how much inventory is available for people to buy a house. And you can make the interest rates as accommodating as you want. It doesn't bring more inventory in for the amount of people who want to buy a home. Like there's literally just a supply demand imbalance taking place. So how do you fix that? Like, how does that cure? How does that change? Right. The only way to change inventory is to either build homes or watch a foreclosures start to take place. Right. This is the only way to get new inventory in. So inventory of new construction is about as steady as it's been prior to COVID. Like, just go and type into a Google search, like building permits, single family dwellings, and then type in the capital F.R.E.D. And you will find the permit issuance that is taking place right now for new construction of single family privately owned residence, right? And you can see that the issuance is about where it was prior to the pandemic. So it hasn't really slowed down and it hasn't picked up that much. It's about where it was. So new inventory is not really coming onto the market in a significant way, not from the building side of things. Now, on the foreclosure side of things, although I'd imagine we're probably going to see a rise in foreclosures considering that the interest rates are going up and people are losing their jobs, but the amount of foreclosures that are adding to the inventory are small, right? So where's this new inventory going to come from that is then going to bring the supply demand balance in line? Right? It's not going to happen. Not that I can see, not from the direction of unemployment rising to the point that people go into foreclosures or new inventory coming on from new construction. People aren't really going to flip their homes going from low interest rates into high interest rates. So now a lot of people feel stuck in their home. Like I know personally at 3.12% interest, I am not interested in giving that up in any way, shape, or form. Even if I didn't like my house, I still would be like, well, I'm going to suck it up, right? So again, like how do we get that new inventory in order to cause the supply demand imbalance to be more in an equilibrium? It's not going to happen. This is also part of the Cantillon effect. So if you look at it in a much bigger macroeconomic scale, there's an old economist from back in the day named Richard Cantillon who actually talked about when you know there's an abundance of money in the system, when rents and leases are at an incredibly high level. Once they're up, it's only available to a certain amount of people out there because everybody else just simply can't afford to own it or be there.
Well, you kind of touched on it. So you sounds like you have a 3.1 mortgage rate, and I know I've heard you talk about it on some other channels. So that decision to purchase a home for yourself was a big, scary decision. So where are you at on making that decision right now? Are you happy you made that decision? Are you regretting it?
Um, so you have to think this is 2020. The mortgage rates are just starting to tick up, right? The Federal Reserve is threatening to raise rates. They got the forward guidance out there. They haven't done anything yet, right? They're still sitting on their hands, but everybody is now positioning themselves to deal with the interest rate increases, including the mortgage market, which is now starting to go up, right? So I'm watching like, I'm like, oh crap, they're on their way, right? Now we got to think back then, what was the narrative, right? Interest rates go up, house prices go down, right? We're going to see a crash of the economy. Right? This was all part of like the narrative out there was crashing and crashing housing, all the crash brothers, right? I was like, I'm scared. I'm like, man, that seems like a reasonable thought, right? Because everybody's talking this way. So that's the impression that I'm under about the housing market. Personally, I had screwed up in my past and not to give any kind of financial advice out there, but Oregon's a non-recourse state when it comes to loans. What that means is if you do not acknowledge your loan for 7 years in any way, shape, or form, it disappears, right? You just don't have to worry about it at all. It goes away. Now there's a lot of states aren't this way, but Oregon is. So essentially, every single phone call I never answered, and any envelope that showed up in the mail, including the court ordered ones, whatever. I threw it all away. I didn't acknowledge my mortgage at all for my foreclosure. And so like after 7 years, I just stopped hearing about it anymore. Right. Well, or after about 5 years, I stopped hearing about it. But here's the problem. When I went to go get my mortgage, right, it did not show up on my credit rating, this foreclosure. So my mortgage lender didn't see it. He didn't know about it. So here it is. according to my credit rating, I had this awesome credit rating. I built up my credit from, being, in bad shape and all that. And I think I got like, he tells me the down payment I'm going to need, everything is lined up for this particular mortgage. And he's like, okay, man, we're good to go. Like, we're awesome. Like, I got a bunch of money in escrow, and I'm nervous as hell about doing this. 2 weeks, like literally, like, I don't even think it was 2 weeks. He calls me up. He's like, bro, the underwriters found that foreclosure. What the hell, dude? It was within a certain amount of years since the foreclosure finalized. I can't give you the original loan. It's not available to you because of this damn foreclosure you have in your past. And I'm like, dude, this house closes in 2 weeks. You telling me I don't have a loan? And he's like, yeah, that's what I'm telling you, man. You don't have a loan. We got to figure this thing out. And he says, so what happened? And I'm trying to explain to him. I was just like, well, my wife was pregnant. She couldn't go back to work. He's like, whoa, wait a minute. You had a loss of, financial condition or, income. And I said, yeah. And he says, okay, write out everything. Show me the tax proof of all this other stuff. He says, I think I have a loan that might be available to you. Right. So we were able to get exemptions from the foreclosure because of the conditions that, we fell into and all this other stuff. But here's the problem. I went from a 3% down up to a 10% down. Right. And I didn't have the money. Like, I did not have the money. I'm in an expensive area. This is a very affluent place that, well, it used to be a nice working town, but now it's, very affluent with, people who have moved here from Portland and remote working and stuff. So all the houses here are super stupid expensive. And he's telling me, dude, you got to come up with 10% down. You better beg, borrow, and figure it out. And so I am literally digging through the cushions, pulling out money from every corner I can. I got my box of silver that I'm about ready to start selling from in order to come up with the down payment. And literally, after scratching together every single dime that I could possibly come up with, I had the down payment. It left me with $300 in my savings account. Literally, that's all the money that I had. Like all the change in my car, everything was gone. So I bought the house. Right. I signed that deal on the house and I got it, and I was scared. Like, I did not, like, nothing about it felt good at all. Right. And for months, I've kind of felt this way. And then as the months were going on, the house price kept ticking up. Like, I'm going to a Zillow estimate and I'm like, holy crap. Like, this thing is going up. Like, at one point, it would go up faster than I could earn money at my job, my wife's job, and YouTube combined. Like, it was going up that fast. And I'm like, this is not right. Okay. So anyway, about a year, like, after I bought it, the house is now like on the Zillow estimate, it was just some ridiculous number, like $110,000 more than what I had paid for it. Right. Like, I got $150,000 equity in my house in a year, after putting 10% down. And I'm like, no, like, okay, no, right. This is not right. And then boom, the switch happens. Tons of money starts coming out for the Zillow estimate. All right. So boom, 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 boom. It comes down and it finally hits to like what I find is a bottom. Like, it doesn't seem to go down any further than this. And it's still now $50,000 more than what I had paid for it 2 years ago. Plus the 10% money I had put down on it. I got all this damn equity in this house. Like, I got a ton of it, and I'm like, so this is awesome. This is like one of the best decisions I have ever made. I have never been so scared about doing something in my entire life that turned out to be so awesome. Like, it worked out great. The family's happy. I'm happy. It's a great location. It's quiet. It's an awesome house. I mean, everything turned out to be awesome. Like, as scared as I was.
I love that story, and I know I've heard it before. You talking about it in other channels, and I just love like you saying you're going through your couch and trying to find find every amount of money you could to come up with that down payment, and like you said, you were scared, you didn't know if you were making the right decision, and it turned out to be a wonderful decision for you and your family. So I'm glad to hear that. But talking about even like the economy, going back to the economy a little bit, you're talking about inflation and whatnot. And I know you talk about it quite a bit, but about the 2%, like what if the Fed never gets there? So can you kind of touch on that a little bit more?
Yeah. So this is something that I have been pretty much like adamant about talking about pretty regularly on my channel. It's something that I feel is like 99.9% of the people out there are really missing it. And it's not their fault. I believe that it is propaganda that is purposefully attempting to be pushed out there upon the public. and it's this idea that the Federal Reserve is attempting to go for a 2% inflation target. Like in and typically this is the way that they would have conducted themselves. But I'm reading like Time magazine talking about the 2% inflation target, describing it, describing how they came up with it, describing how it's used and how they, how they are conducting themselves using it. I was just reading or saw a CNBC video today that did somewhat of the very same thing. I see these top economists talking about how it is that the Federal Reserve is going for this 2% target. The only people who are not talking about a 2% target is the Federal Reserve themselves. They talk about a 2% average inflation rate over time, which is not a 2% target. They even say in their own words that what they are attempting to do is to make up for shortfalls from the 2% target that they failed to achieve over the past few years. So now, if you were to go and look at an inflation chart from the Federal Reserve, and I mean not the inflation chart coming from like Shadow Stats or something like that, where it's the real inflation rate, but the one that the Federal Reserve is looking at, right? Because we're not the ones in charge of monetary policy. I mean, as much as we can wish and hope and dream and pray that they do it the right way or the way that we think they should, it's not going to go out that way. What's going to happen is they're going to conduct themselves in a particular fashion, and we need to position ourselves in accordance to that, not what we hope or wish that they should do, but what they are doing, right? And so when I look at the inflation rate that the Federal Reserve is looking at, they failed. They failed to achieve their 2% target. There was many times that they were able to be above it, but most of the time they were below it, and very rarely did they ever actually achieve any kind of consistency at 2%. So they have never, ever been at 2% on any kind of stable or consistent fashion. They have either been below it or above it, and most of the time they were below it. And they know this, right? They know that there was this inflation expectation that was beginning to anchor itself too low. Like people just didn't believe that there was going to be inflation going into the future. In fact, if you remember, Donald Trump, towards the end of his administration, was screaming, there's no inflation. The Fed should be printing money. They should take interest rates into negative territory. Now, I don't believe that's exactly what Trump wanted, but I think that was in conjunction with the Federal Reserve to try and do something as far as lowering the inflation expectation to raise the real interest rates. But that's a different story. The point being is that at the time there was very low inflation expectation going into the future, and that was screwing the Federal Reserve's monetary policy. Now, what's the problem with the Fed's monetary policy is that the Fed funds rate, which is the interest rate that they use to adjust the interest rates in the big banks, had hit the lower bound of zero, making it very difficult for them to operate their monetary policy during a time of downturns and needing to stimulate the economy. If you're at zero, dropping of interest rates is not an effective tool. So if you can't lower interest rates around 5%, then the problem with it is that people are not going to go out there to borrow money to buy houses and cars and go on vacation and stimulate the economy. They run out of what they call scope, right? They ran out of scope because they couldn't move anymore. They just had no more monetary policy. So it was absolutely critical for their monetary policy to find some sort of inflationary scenario that could get them to raise their Fed funds rate up in order to combat that Fed or that inflation and regain their ammo. And that's exactly what ended up taking place during the pandemic. Now, I'm not one to say it was a plandemic, but all I'm saying is that if it had not occurred, the COVID pandemic, plandemic, whatever you want to call it, if there wasn't that shutdown and there wasn't that inflationary scenario and the people's expectation of a higher inflation coming into the future, the Fed never would have gotten that ammo back. Right? And so now
Yeah.
here they are with their monetary policy totally in position. Now it came down to that inflation expectation that was going into the future and what it is that people are feeling that it's coming today. Like they still believe that the Fed is going for a 2% target. Like if inflation gets to 2%, they'll adjust their monetary policy. They'll start bringing interest rates down. But that's not what they said that they'll do. They said that they're going to go for a 2% average inflation rate over time, which means that there is going to be times of keeping inflation elevated above that 2%. The other problem with this is they give us no mathematical formula for figuring this out. So and then it becomes arbitrary to the Federal Reserve. Oh man, talk about confusing, right? Did you get all that?
Yeah, no, I love it. Like I said, a lot of times, like I said, you get that basic concept of it. You go very in depth on it, which is super helpful, though. I mean, like I said, it gets you thinking a lot differently. Like I said, I'm kind of like you. I feel, I mean, not to that level, but I feel like economics, whatnot, it's become a passion for me, and I never really followed it as much as I should have, when I was younger and whatnot. I just kind of went with the flow of things. But I love what you're talking about. And so maybe, you hear a lot of doomers out there right now about talking about how bad everything is, things are crashing. So in your opinion, are things as bad as a lot of these doomers are making it out to be right now?
Yeah, for those guys, it's terrible. Sure. All right. It's because they positioned themselves in a way that's going to get absolutely damaged and hammered. Like every single one of us is the economy individually, right? Like we are the most important economy there is. Our individual choices and the decisions that we have made. Like you think about it, some people are going to do killer. They are going to kill it in the next recession, right? They are going to do quite well. Other people are going to be sucking it. They're going to have their entire lives totally flipped upside down. So who has the good economy and who has the bad economy, right? I mean, is it a bad economy when the majority of the people are feeling it and just a handful of people are feeling good about it? Or is it just happen to be the situation it is? Like right now it's raining. Is that a bad thing or a good thing? Right? It just is. It's just raining. It's not a good or bad thing. It's just the way it is. And you have to condition yourselves to deal with it. Like I can't be doing my video outside. I mean, I could, it would suck. But I mean, ultimately, I have to be inside. I know that because it's raining outside. It's not a bad thing, right? It's just the way it is. And so if you have conditioned yourself in a way that is going to be best appropriate for the market conditions, then it's not a bad economy, no matter what happens. I mean, things could slow down, interest rates can go up, prices could start coming down. But the position that you have taken says, hey, I'm not hurt by this. I understood that it was coming. I know that it's here. It's going to be bad weather for a while. And eventually it's all going to pass and I'm going to come back because of the way that I position myself. Other people are going to have their entire world melt because they made it out of sugar, right? And they're outside in the rain. And that's essentially what's going to end up happening. And they're going to talk about how bad it is and how bad the market conditions are because they had this expectations coming from the future that was totally false. Like they shouldn't have done that. And that's really what it comes down to. So a good economy, bad economy is really just about the way that you have positioned yourself. With that being said, things are going to slow down quite a bit. I feel that there's going to be liquidity issues coming in within this year 2024, and it's not me just going off of these assumptions. If you listen to the Federal Reserve and you kind of sit in the room long enough with them with their conversations, like obviously I'm not sitting in a room with them, but I'm reading their documents, right? So if you read through it enough, you can see that they are conditioning these banks or getting the banks conditioned to deal with having a much bigger buffer for market stress, which generally means that liquidity is drying up. If you go and you look at the Treasury has made statements that they are planning on doing a bond buyback program here sometime in the middle of 2024. So over the next, 6 months or so, there's going to be a moment in there in which you're going to find the Treasury actually buying back their own bonds. This is liquidity issues that are taking place. Now, is it going to turn into an actual liquidity crisis? I don't know, right? But it's certainly coming to a point where I would feel that there's going to be some serious market stress because if you have liquidity issues taking place, getting loans is going to be very difficult. And if you're not getting loans, then there's no participation taking place within the economy, buying houses, cars, and going on vacation.
Man, there's nothing uneducated about your information, man. I mean, I want to know how much time do you think you spend, you know, looking at economic data?
Too much, man. So yeah, I spend a lot of time doing this. This is the thing. This is something that I found when I wasn't doing well, like when I was like kind of in depression and going into debt and all this other stuff, is that I would go to work and I would work real hard all day, right? And I would spend like the entire time like really focused in on doing what I was doing, whether it was building the houses or doing sales or doing whatever. I would work real hard all day. And then the moment that I got off of work, I would start chasing pleasure. I would get drunk and get stoned or do whatever, like just chase pleasure the entire time. And here's the problem: if you're chasing excellence, it's cool. But the moment that you chase pleasure, you're going to experience pain, right? And a good way to kind of understand this is like if you go do something, just do anything that's pleasurable. Go to the bar, drink a bunch of beer, and eat a bunch of food, and see how you feel the next day, right? You're going to be bloated and hungover, and you're going to feel like hell. But the night that you did it, it felt great, right? It was awesome. You chased all this pleasure, and then you experienced the pain from it. This happens no matter what. It's a universal power that ends up taking place. So I found that if I started chasing excellence after I had already been chasing excellence, then good things really started to happen within my life. This is how I met George Gammon. This is how I was able to get to the Rebel Capitalist and speak on stage. How I was able to build a 100,000 YouTube channel is because all my efforts is into constantly chasing excellence. And the moment that I deviate from that and chase some pleasure, I start feeling the pain and experience from that. So to me, I am in a constant state of pursuing excellence, whether it's on my YouTube channel or in my personal life. And unless I am actually doing something with my family, I am generally reading an article or doing something for my YouTube channel. If I was to put it down to an average, probably 3 to 4 hours a day
Yeah,
of just solid study work.
I love, sorry, I just took notes on what you said, chasing excellence. I love that. That
Yeah.
was, yeah, that's amazing. I never thought of it that way, but
I had to figure out what happened to me because I was 40 years old, had nothing going on, right? All of a sudden, here I'm 45 years old. I got all this clout on YouTube. I've got all this stuff going on. Money's rolling in from ad revenue. Like I'm buying a house. Like all this massive change happened to me. And I had no idea what was going on. Like zero. Like it felt like something grabbed a hold of me and was now shoving me forward, right? A lot of people refer to the Lord or God or something like that, right? I'm not a religious person, so I had a hard time like accepting this into my life, right? But even though that very well could be what it is, to me, I understood it as a universal power, right? If you put out good out there into the universe, right? If you are in pursuit of excellence, then you can't help but to have like the good in life and all the things that carry that kind of vibration start moving into your sight, into your view, right? If you are thinking negative things and like even the Federal Reserve, if you take a negative view of the Federal Reserve that they're going to hurt your life, that's exactly what it's going to end up doing because you are going to position yourself for that outcome, right? But if you position yourself for an outcome of excellence, right, of all the good things that I'm experiencing, even the bad things that I hear about are going to benefit me going into the future, then the world starts aligning for you to go down that particular path. It's just like it's the most amazing thing that you could ever see. Right. But it's not a magic secret. It's literally but the things you're thinking and the way you feel about it. Right. That's what starts bringing in the positive reactions from your experiences.
I love it. Well, let's kind of wrap it up soon. My last thing I want to ask is
Sure.
how has YouTube changed your life, I guess?
Oh, bro. In every way. Like, I mean, I think that's kind of what we've been covering here for the last few minutes. But I mean, YouTube has really given me the opportunity to now like not only like express who I really feel who I am, to the world and to say, hey man, here's my honest being and the things that I think. And the amount of like return from just doing that, just being out there has just been incredible. Like not even like the monetary kind of part of things, but just the return on like, hey, thank you for putting out this information. You have really helped me in so many ways. I don't know if people have ever had that happen to them in their life where somebody came up and says, "Dude, this effort that you put out that you don't even think was much did so much for me in my world," right? When you realize that's happening for the first time, it's worth so much more than you could ever possibly imagine. Like that is the most valuable thing that has ever happened to me in my life. Like I've tried, like people said, dude, you're a really good teacher. Like I'll be out a job site showing somebody how to frame up a wall or something like that. They'll be like, dude, you're a really good teacher. But to have somebody come to me out of the blue and say, man, you changed my life with your story and the things that you have told, that makes me and does everything to not only motivate me and give me ambition, but it's like it does more for me than I think they even realize, when they come to me and say that.
So, what advice would you give someone that was thinking about starting a YouTube channel or putting out more content on social media?
Okay. Number one, if you have no channel started, go make a video today. Go make the very first video. As soon as you watch this, turn on, as soon as you end this video, go and put your video camera on and make your very first video. Don't care how bad it is. Do not care, right? Post it anyway. And posted a bad video, like post bad videos. Because what's going to end up happening is you're going to see why it was bad and why it was good. And then you're going to start doing good videos after that. It's a matter of getting going, right? You can't like You can always wait till tomorrow to start it, but you can start it right now and you change the moment that you start, right? So, like, if you want to be a YouTuber, start being the YouTuber. Do it today, do it right now. If you already are putting out content, to me, it's a matter of being consistent, both not only in the content that you are putting out, like if you're putting out macroeconomics, stay to macroeconomics, right? If you're consistent on real estate, probably stick with real estate. You might be able to bend into other parts of the economy, but stay consistent to your channel. If you're talking about fishing, stay in fishing. Don't go like from fishing to baseball to, how to build a house. Like they don't I mean, unless that's what your channel is like kind of geared around, like being a dude in that fashion, like maybe that's like kind of the brand. But for the most part, your viewers in YouTube and everything else wants that consistency, right? They want to see like they want to be able to go to your channel and get the information that they are kind of expecting you to put out there, right? But all of a sudden, if I start talking about fishing and how to tie lures and stuff like that, people would be like, "What the hell is this?" Right? The other part is being consistent on timing, right? It doesn't have to be every day. Like I put out a video every day, or I try to, or sometimes I even put 2 or 3 videos out a day. To me, that's even a little bit of oversaturation. You don't need to do that much. Really, you just need to put out like a video once a week would probably be enough. I mean, as long as it's a good quality video. And like I said, I do them every day just because I'm just so passionate about doing it. I just can't help it, right? But really, I don't need to do that. If you were to put out one video a week, make it a video that is good, like a video that you would want to see, right? Like at first, it's not going to be a video that you would want to see because they suck. But as you get better at it and you start to learn your audience, and YouTube is picking up the videos and spreading them around, put out videos that you would want to see. Like if you go and review it and you can watch the entire thing and like kind of go like, wow, man, I really like listening to myself talk, and you're doing good. But if you're like, dude, I hope nobody sees this, probably shouldn't post that. Okay. Just say it. So that's kind of like my advice to it, because really anything can be content. My wife has a YouTube channel, like an ASMR channel, where she does the dishes, literally turns the camera on, does the dishes, and turns the camera off, right? And you would not believe how many people are following her. She has 500 subscribers. She gets constant views. She has some videos with over 5,000 views on it. And it doesn't like, at first you would think, why? Why would anybody want to watch these videos of her doing her chores? Like literally like washing the dishes and folding clothes and doing vacuuming and stuff like that. But then I realized one day when I'm sitting there reviewing one of the videos, and I'm just sitting there just trying to understand, like, it's a 10-minute video or 15-minute video of her doing the dishes. And I'm just sitting there going, yeah, it's just her doing dishes, clankety clank clank, And then after a minute there, I'm like, wow, the way it's hitting that casserole pan, the water, it's making a really nice sound. And I'm like, oh, it's the sound, it's the trickling sound of the water. People are putting that on in the background. They're really enjoying that, right?
Uh-uh.
So I mentioned that. I said, hey, be aware of the sounds. Like try to make it like more of a trickling sound. If you can place a cup underneath the water or something like that. And then boom, man, all of a sudden she started getting a lot more views just because of the adjustment to the sound just by watching it. And she had put out 100 videos by the time we had picked this up. But as soon as she realized that, she started doing more videos with sound in mind. And sure enough, it started getting more views. So, it's really anything can be content, anything.
What about for those people that are like, oh, what kind of camera do I get? What microphone? And people that's holding them back from actually starting.
Um, Yeah, I have built 130,000 subscriber YouTube channel, done all kinds of stuff, collaboration, Zoom meetings, done everything that you could ever possibly imagine me doing on a YouTube channel with nothing more than a cell phone.
I
Never
love
once ever did I use a computer for anything. Now, with that being said, when I would conduct the Zoom meetings, like as far as when I would do an interview, I'd ask somebody to come on my channel. I did have an assistant who would set up the Zoom meeting from her remote location. She would invite the two of us and then exclude her out of the meeting and then record it. So that's the way I was able to do interviews like this on my side of things. I couldn't do it with my phone. I did have to have an assistant to do that part of it. But other than that, the interviews, everything that I've ever done has been off of my cell phone. I've never used a computer for anything.
I love it. All right. So before we wrap things up, where can people find you and get a hold of you if they need information? But yeah, where can people find you, Simon?
Uneducated economist, if you Google that, you're going to find all kinds of places. I'm pretty much, that's me everywhere. I'm active on YouTube. That's pretty much where I'm at. I do have the Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all the other stuff. I sometimes kind of go to those places. I try to monitor the messages that are sent there so that I can at least pick it up. But I'm not very active on those other platforms. I just simply just don't have the time between all the research that I'm doing and getting the videos out. So I'm pretty consistent on YouTube as far as being active there. And then if you wanted to send me an email, it's uneducatedeconomist@gmail.com. But yeah, other than that, that's where I'm at.
All right, man. Thank you for doing this, and I hope to see you at another event someday.
Yeah, me too.
All right, thanks, Simon.
See ya.